All right, everybody, this is episode 3 of Draw With Me. Still drawing these legions. If you're wondering why I'm drawing these so much, this is for a much larger composition. So I'm just sketching in the figures in different poses, working out some of the problems. And I got a sketch here of a Centurion that I did at the cafe this morning. And didn't need any references for this guy because I've researched the armor before, so I kind of know where the pieces fit more or less. But he is kind of, basic, but that's kind of what makes the drawing effective, I think. So I'm only really focusing on light and shadow, and he only took me about maybe 50 minutes to draw, maybe close to an hour, which I don't think is bad. No, it was a nice morning sketching away at the cafe. So anyway, I think for today's video, we're gonna draw this guy again. But I might try and change some things about him. Definitely want to change his uniform here. I remember in some of the references I researched ages ago, they've got like these sort of medallions that they carry on their chest. It's like a chest plate kind of thing, I'm not sure. So I might want to draw that in the next design. And I'm just going to go as long as I can. I'm going to maybe put him there so you can see him on the edge of the screen. But I'll go as long as I can without using a reference, basically. Because there's always a part in the drawing where, you've got the basics mapped in, like the lights and the shadows, and then you've just got to fill in the gaps of information with references. That's how I like to work. So I really need to think of a more captivating pose because he's just standing there not doing much. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Let's just start sketching. I'm sure we'll find something. Okay, so let's start with the head. I might change his head so that he's like looking directly at us. Actually, no, I like that pose. So let's just keep it like that. So let's just map in the basic head shape then. Let's just, his ear, and then maybe a little bit of his ear on the other side. Although because his head is rotated at an angle, we're seeing less of that one. Let's draw, maybe I'll just map in the center line of his face real quick. Okay. Neck. All right. Just gonna kind of map in the position of his torso a little bit. So I'm just gonna take the head measure. That will be where his chest is, more or less. Might alter that a little. I'll take that measure. So his crotch would be somewhere, maybe about there. I'm really just sketching very loosely, to be honest. I'm not trying to measure the proportions in too much detail. Don't really want to do that. So I'm just trying to think, what's he going to do with his arms? Because in this drawing, he's not doing anything with his arms, which is kind of what makes it look a bit, just a little bit weird. I don't know what to do. I don't really think about the pose too much. And that's probably a mistake. You want to, it's all well and good drawing figures from imagination, but you got to really have an idea of what pose you want. I think maybe, because I wanted, I don't know, I had this idea of maybe him like holding a shield, but I also want to draw the uniform and I don't want the shield to obscure it. So I think what I'll do, I'll draw an arm here, just using very basic shapes. And then maybe his hand is resting on his shield on this side. And then that leaves this area open for some uniform. Sketch that in maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to go too overboard with that stuff. Right. So now I need to think about putting some clothes on him. So that's the thing. I'm not really drawing the anatomy in great detail because I don't have to do that. What's his arm going to be doing here? Yeah, I don't have to do that because he's just going to wear clothes anyway. I just have to draw the positions of things. I just have to, you know, sort of draw the nipple line, maybe estimate where his crotch is so that I know where his hips are, so that I know where to draw the belt, so on and so forth. Because, you know, clothing and armor is designed around human anatomy, so I don't have to draw it in detail, but I do have to draw the position of it using the basic proportions. So then the elbow is kind of somewhere there. I'm not gonna measure that too much. Don't know what this hand is doing. Again, I didn't really. Maybe he's holding his sword. Just really basic lines to begin with. Really don't want to confuse myself. Okay, so let's start sketching in then. Because he's got like these, I'm looking at this sketch here, he's got like these sort of shoulder pads that go around. And the texture of his armor is like chainmail. So I'm just gonna make a mental note of that. But this is kind of like how I sketch. Like I'll start with a sketch like this one here and just focus on the light and shadows. And then in the next sketch, I kind of try to refine it a little more, if I can. But I don't want to get caught up in details or anything. Just going to draw his belt. I think he's got like maybe like a smaller belt sort of hanging off down here somewhere. And then that could be like where the holster for his sword is going. something like that. So I'm just going to draw his tunic, which would be something like that, I guess. That chainmail shirt, it kind of drags down, sort of covers a bit lower, sort of his lower body around there. So I'm just going to, again, just map it in. Okay. And they've got like a cape as well. So I've got to think about, yeah, this one I got a little bit confused with all the drapery folds, and I was just kind of winging it. So I think this time I kind of want to draw it with a bit more of a plan. But again, I don't want to make it too detailed or convoluted or anything. I'll just sketch some broken lines. Yeah, the sleeve of his t-shirt. I really like that sort of shape that I drew there, so I might just take that. So, what was I saying before about? So yeah, when you're sketching from your head, I think you have to draw something a couple of times over just to really give yourself a chance to refine the idea. Because the first sketch that you do is very rarely the one you're going to be happy with. The first sketch, you're usually just... Hang on a second, let me just think. So if his shoulder is here, and then maybe the sleeve kind of flares out a little bit like that. What was I saying? Yeah, the first sketch is very rarely the one you're most happy with. So always pays to redraw something a couple of times. Okay. Let's draw some of that detail in here. So let me think if that goes, because he always got like this sort of, I'm just going to sketch it in. Because when I was drawing the Centurions in my large drawing, I think one of the references I looked at, they had like these, they were like these bronze sort of medallions that sort of covered the torso. And they look cool. So I thought, well, gotta put them in. If it looks cool, draw it, add it to your design. Okay. I'm not sure what they are. Like, I don't know the names of them. I'm not really sure what they symbolize, but they do look good. So let me just clean up that line work a little bit, because that's a little bit too much, I think. There we go. So when I'm sketching, kind of want to use as few lines as possible to capture the idea, because if I can do that, then normally I end up with a bit more of a successful drawing. I'm just kind of sketching in his forearm. I'll do the same here too. I'll just draw the sleeve of his t-shirt. So I like to kind of, like I'm drawing a lot of broken lines, and I'm not rushing through this stage because it's kind of important. If your line is essentially a plan. It's a blueprint. So it doesn't really make sense to rush that part, I don't think. I think you've got to really put some effort into it, but without making it too complicated, which is very difficult. But okay, so let's go here, there. Yeah, so we've got these bits. He's got like these leather straps hanging off his chainmail. So I'm just going to sketch the positions of those, not with any real accuracy, but just putting an impression of them, I suppose. Just trying to get some really interesting silhouette shapes in there, because your silhouette has got to be strong. I'll just put some guidelines like that. And you know what? I think I didn't draw it in this sketch, but I think there's some leather straps that go around the sleeves as well. So I'm thinking that would also be a good idea to draw some of them in. I didn't do that in the last sketch, but let's put some in. Let's just... And again, these are guidelines. Everything I'm doing is a guide. These are not final. They are just going to help me to get to the finished piece. Everything I draw is subject to change, so that's why I'm not trying to draw them perfectly. And I'm just going to start erasing things as well. If there's anything that I think is just a bit too messy or convoluted, I can just go in there and yeah, that might be okay to work with. I'm just having a look. So I'm basically assessing my line work. And I'm just having a look at, what's being communicated effectively, what isn't. Maybe this cape that wraps around his neck, that could be a bit more better defined. They got like this badge as well. I just remembered there's this badge. I think that's what I drew there. I call it a badge, but it holds the cape together. It's like I should really research the names of all of these pieces of armor. But anyway, it's like I'm just going to draw like an elliptical shape, more or less. Sketch that in there. I'm going to keep my lines broken. Do not want to commit. I don't want to commit to any part of the drawing at this stage because I don't know. I might want to change it. So let's have a look then at the helmet. The helmets I'm pretty good at drawing because I've drawn them a million times. And I'm drawing very simply. Like I'm using very simple line work, but I'm thinking about the 3D form. So even though I'm not explicitly drawing the 3D form, I'm thinking about it. Like my brain is kind of going in overdrive, to be honest. Trying to figure out what's going on. It's like that sort of flap, that sort of folds out. Okay, let's just get some guidelines happening. There's a visor. You know, you could map the form out, like you could draw the center line of his face like that, and then you could sketch in the center line of his helmet, which would be a little bit offset from there because it's a 3D form. And then to sculpt the center of his visor, you could draw that center line there. So you're kind of like drawing like almost like a topography of the form. It's one way you could do it. Maybe if the drawing was a bit bigger, I would do that a lot more, but it's a pretty small drawing, so I don't want to bog myself down with too much of that. Okay, so the back of the helmet, which I kind of want the edge to be here, because we're seeing more of this side. So I'm just going to sketch in an ellipse. I think I want it to be a bit wider. That's why it's easier to use an ellipse, because if you want to change it, it only takes a second to do that. Okay, and then yeah, they got like this back flap coming out here. This bit's, I've drawn this thing 100 times, so kind of know what I'm doing there. Let's just follow the guideline. So it'd be about there. It's very possible that we probably can't even see this side, but, you know, from the perspective, but I'm going to draw it in anyway, just because I think it looks better. Just going to erase. But again, I'm always cleaning up my lines. Just, I'm not getting rid of all of the constructions because I kind of like it, but I do got to clean it up a bit. Maybe might just lower the top of that. So, you know, if you're going to make any changes to your drawing, now's the time to do it. You don't have to spend this long on the line work, but typically I find that the longer you spend on it, the more prepared you're going to be. Now he's got this plume on the top of his helmet, which, I don't know, if that's like the center of the helmet right there. So I'm gonna draw that center line down. I'm just gonna draw a construction just to kind of help me. Yeah, that's a cool position. Maybe I'll make that a bit shorter. everything is an estimation. Everything is subject to change. Just trying to avoid drawing too tight. All right, well, we got something. And you can see the pose is slightly different from the first one, which is okay. I should really put a bit more effort into his hand here. So I just got to think about the planes of the hand, because I didn't do this in the first sketch. Didn't draw his hands at all in the first sketch. So got to think about his shield. If I want it to make it a bit wider. So this is the point where I'm just really seeing what I want to do with my drawing now. I've got an impression. But now I've got to start thinking about what I want to leave in and what I want to leave out. And what do I want to change? What do I want to keep? I'm going to go for these more curved shields. Can't remember which legions had those, but they had like these sort of curved rectangular shields, and I haven't really drawn too much of them. So I figured they would be a lot of fun to draw for this guy. Got that circular bit. And the shield there. Cool. All right. That looks all right. So I think I've pretty much got everything I want. I don't know if I'm happy with his hand here. Should probably refine that. So let me just do that real quick. Oh man, I suck at drawing hands from imagination. Sometimes I can do it well, other times I can't. So I'm probably, I don't know, I'll just keep it basic. I don't want to, I'm also trying to draw his sword as well. Which is also proving to be rather difficult for me. I don't think my brain has fully woken up today. Maybe something like that. We'll go with that. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to confuse myself too much. Sometimes you draw too many lines and the whole thing just ends up being a mess. So what are we? We're half an hour in, so I probably should have started toning ages ago. So let's get some shadows in. I'm going to use, I really like this lighting setup where the angle of the sun or the light is a bit lower. So he's got these cast shadows on his face. So let's go. I might just stop talking for a bit, just because I need to concentrate this part. Right, let's keep moving. Let's keep it moving. Almost got tunnel visioned into that face for a second. Shadow there, shadows here. Just going to start with really very basic shapes. And this is all an estimation, what I'm doing. And this is why I don't want to go too detailed with the lines, because you end up losing a lot of the line work anyway. When you start putting in these shadows. So I don't think there's much point in going too detailed, really. I'm just going to keep it very sketchy. I'm going to keep my hatching strokes quite light, if I can. I'm just going to go around this detail. Because they're like made of bronze or something, they are reflective materials. And typically I don't want to render those too soon. Anything reflective is, well, I mean, this one would probably have a bit of shadow over it, but anything reflective is kind of highly dependent on its environment. So don't really want to get too carried away with those. Okay, let's chip back into those shadows. Maybe some drapery folds in the chainmail down here. Be some here, I'd imagine. All right, so now I'm going to look for opportunities to start changing the shapes a little bit. now that I've got some tone on there. Didn't shade any of this in. But yeah, I'm really just going for it because I don't know if this drawing is going to turn out well. You know, every time I sketch, I just have to tell myself that I'm not guaranteed a good drawing. It would be nice, but you know, sometimes things just don't work out, and that's normal. But that's another reason to kind of draw quickly, I guess, so that you don't waste so much time working on a drawing that just isn't working out. And, you know, sometimes you've got to give drawings a chance to develop. They don't all, you know, develop at the same speed. Some drawings you've really got to put some love into. I had somebody message me on Instagram not long ago, and they were asking, you know, like what were some of the things that I learned, like what were some drawing techniques that I learned to draw from imagination, like effectively? And that was a very good question. But I think if I had to guess one thing, I think it would be architecture. Because when I was studying the residential drafting course, you know, we had to think in 3D a lot, and we were given a concept for like designing a house, but there was no visualization or anything like that. Like we kind of had to visualize it a little bit. My coffee's going cold, so I might just finish this. And so we really had to, you know, get good at perspective and get good at thinking three-dimensionally. And I mean, perspective drawing was already a skill that I had anyway, but yeah, in architecture drawing, you're kind of visualize something in a 3D space. So I guess if you want to look at some books on like architecture drawing, and like maybe like old school books as well, like because a lot of architects, they don't really draw manually anymore. Some do, but I know in Australia anyway, a lot of them are very reliant on CAD. But old school architecture books would be a pretty good source of information, and maybe try dabbling in a bit of technical drawing as well. So, you know, like your isometric views and your descriptive geometries and all that stuff. Because I did that for a while, and I think that's kind of what helped my brain to think in the 3D. All right. So you can kind of see this sketch actually took way longer than it should have, but we've kind of got an impression, and that's kind of all you need. That's really all you need. So let's get back into it. But yeah, try maybe learning a little bit of technical drawing. You don't even have to get that good at it, but just dabble in it a little bit and see what you learn. Because, you know, technical drawing for me anyway, that really helped me to visualize things three-dimensionally. And somebody also said to me, they asked me if I was like really against using references, because you know I make such a big deal about drawing from imagination all the time, and I'm not against using references. I mean, I had to use references to draw this when I was learning what Centurions looked like. You know, like I had to actually research the different pieces of armor. So it's like, yeah, I'm drawing it from my head now, but you know, I only learned how to draw Roman armor like last year. You know, this is a relatively new subject still for me, and yeah, I had to. You know, look at photographs and look at books and illustrations and just to kind of familiarize myself with it. Because you can't draw something if you don't know what it is and if you don't know what it looks like. Like if you try drawing a car, but, well, you know, think about what a car looks like. It's got an engine, it's got windows, it's got four wheels, usually. But, you know, if you've never seen a car before in your life, then you're not going to be able to draw it, are you? And I know that sounds like a ridiculous example, but I'm only using that as an example. So, you know, you have to know what something looks like in order to be able to draw it. So I'm not against using references, but what I am against is using references too much. Once you're already familiar with the subject, like, I mean, I'm very familiar with Roman armor now, so I don't really need to use it as much. I would still need to use it to do the tiny details and kind of fill in the gaps of information here and there. But other than that, I'm really not gonna bother. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought. But you know, the only reason I'm against using references too much is because they influence the drawing too much, in my opinion. Like if I just had like a photo reference in front of me right now, I find myself falling into the trap of copying it a bit too much. And as a result, I end up with an image that kind of is mine, but kind of isn't. Whereas if I put the references away, then I'm doing two things. Like A, I'm challenging myself, which is going to make me a better artist. But B, I'm also thinking a bit more creatively. I'm thinking about what I want the figure to do and the pose that I want them to be in and things like that, you know? So by removing the reference, yes, it's a bit harder because I'm kind of relying on my imagination, which is really hard to visualize things, but I'm also giving myself a chance to explore as well and be creative and do things that maybe I wouldn't normally do if I was just copying from a reference. So for me, it's all about staying creative. That's why I removed the reference. It's not that I'm against using them, but this early in the drawing, I really just want to, you know, it forces me to imagine what the figure is doing. It forces me to imagine the perspective, and it forces me to imagine the composition if I'm working on a big drawing, you know. And I think those are all very important things. And I think it's important for the artist to create that, not the reference. That's just me though. But you know, once I've got the idea on the page, like this guy, then I can introduce references. So it's like, you know, this helmet that I'm drawing is a little bit basic at the moment. So I'm going to try for as long as I can to just keep sketching away. But there will come a point where, you know, I probably can't do anything more to it. And maybe I'll just pull up a reference just to kind of have a look at a photo and be like, oh, okay, maybe I can add that to the drawing. Or maybe I could do this instead or that and blah, blah, blah. So, but right now, I don't want references. I just want to keep sculpting. I just want to keep playing around. I just want to keep being creative because I'm having a lot of fun. It's more fun to draw like this. That's another reason. So I used to be a hyper-realist, meaning all I could do was copy from photos. And I used to think I was just, I used to think my drawings were good just because I could copy from a photograph exactly. But yeah, it was a very rude awakening when I tried drawing something from my head and I realized I actually could not draw at all. I just could not draw. So I think that's an element to it. Like I just want to really break away from using photographs so much, and I just want to go back to drawing from my imagination, just like I did when I was a kid. And it's just more fun that way. Keeps drawing a lot more fun. Just trying to figure out the planes of the nose here. Okay. Oops. Yeah, this is kind of where I start getting a bit too tight because I'm getting the eraser in there and then I'm getting the pencil in there. So, you know, maybe I'll just move to a different location for now. If I start drawing very tight like that, that's how I know I've got to keep moving. Because otherwise this drawing is going to take all day, and it doesn't need to. Really doesn't need to. Just got to hatch those shadows in, deepen them here and there. Not being afraid to lose some edges here and there as well. I think there should be a shadow. His arm should be casting a shadow on himself. So I don't know why I didn't draw that in before. Well, let's get that hatched in. Jesus, that was a pretty big mistake. It's kind of hard to loosen up because you know you want the drawing to be good, but you don't want to take unnecessary risks all the time. But unfortunately, I think it's just one of those things where you really just got to have faith and loosen up and see what happens. So this is the shadow of the sword that's being casted on him. Again, just very simply scratching away at that. I'm not thinking too hard about that one. I'm just imagining it would sort of fall over his uniform like that. Yeah, it's always tricky to draw like this because you got to draw fast, you got to keep it moving. But you can't be too messy about it either. It's a very paradoxical way of drawing, I think. I love drawing like this though. Like I love sketching. I love how playful it is. I love how you can get quick results of an image. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love it. I just do get a bit nervous though. So this is kind of where I'm just refining the edges. I'm refining the edges so that we can get a clearer idea of what we've got. And that's the thing, when you draw something from your head, you have a very hazy idea of what it is you're drawing. You don't quite... just bumped the table again, sorry. You don't quite have a visual, because everything in your mind is very unarticulated, I would say. But then, you have to draw anyway. Even if you haven't got a clear visual in your mind, you should still put something on the page because you're supposed to find it. That's what I'm doing right now. Sometimes I can do it quickly. I should have recorded this guy because, he only took me an hour. Although he is rather, basic, I guess. But I think I'm putting a lot more effort into this guy just because I want him to be better than the last one. But again, I don't know if he will be, but anyway. But like I was saying, you have a very hazy idea, but it's your job as an artist to find it, and you have to search for it. And you've just got to put some marks on the paper and just go for it. Because the sooner you draw something, the sooner you're going to make mistakes. And the sooner you make mistakes, the sooner you can start correcting them. So that's my philosophy when it comes to drawing. And there are days where you have a really good day and everything is falling into place and you can do sketches really quickly. But there are also days where you have a really bad day and, the drawings are taking longer than you wanted to, and nothing is really turning out the way you want it, and it's frustrating. But that's part of the process of learning to draw. You have to kind of go through that, unfortunately. But I think that's like every skill you learn in life. You're not going to be good at it straight away. You've got to train yourself and be disciplined, and just don't ever stop practicing. Just be consistent. All right, let's deepen that. But it's amazing how just a few hatching strokes can get you such a strong impression of an image. And it looks like I'm focusing a lot on two-dimensional shapes, which in a sense I am, because everything I'm drawing is sort of simplified. But even though it looks like I'm drawing two-dimensionally, I'm actually thinking three-dimensionally. I'm thinking about the perspective of things. I'm thinking about if they are looking correct and if they're turning correctly and all of that. And I'm thinking about how the shadows are sort of landing on the figure. I might not be explicitly drawing all of those things, but I am thinking about them a lot. So it's not really impressionism, even though it kind of looks like it. I'm actually thinking very, very three-dimensionally right now. I'm thinking about how all those forms are curving around, and I'm just trying to draw it in the simplest way I possibly can. So I need to really, I think if I really want to make this drawing work, I think I've got to start simplifying a lot of these shadow shapes now. I'm just going to start erasing things that I don't want. I've got to think about unifying some of these shadows. Got to really simplify shapes a little more. It's really hard. But yeah, I spend a long time on the shadows, only because, well, they're just very, very important. Light and shadow will always get you very quick results if you're sketching. If you focus on the shadow shapes and the light shapes, you'll get very quick results. They might not be perfect results, but you'll still have a very effective image, I think. So, gotta focus on that. And silhouette, creating strong silhouettes, just changing things to make the drawing better here and there. It's definitely a good thing to do. Let's just, I'm just gonna alter the shape of that a little more. Yeah, I'm really trying to simplify these shadow shapes. I'm just trying to make them blend in with each other now a bit. So that way I can just create a much stronger silhouette. So it's an interesting way of drawing this, because it's like I'm thinking 3D, but at the same time I'm also thinking 2D. I'm definitely going to need a reference for this anatomy. I'll just shade in a bits and pieces here and there, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to win that fight. All right. Like I can remember some parts of the anatomy, and maybe I'll just shade in a few shapes just to kind of get me started. And also, you know, to get more interesting results. But I don't know, if I want to do that correctly, I should probably consult Gottfried Bemes. He's a good one. I like looking at his drawings. I don't really like looking at anatomy photos because, I don't know, a lot of the time they only serve to confuse. And it's just information that I don't really need a lot. And I'm still kind of working out the shadow shapes of things anyway, so I don't want to confuse myself with photographs. Okay. Let's start cleaning up this image. I don't really know what's going on here. This was his holster for his sword, which I think I'm just going to shade in. I'm just going to get rid of that detail. I don't think it's especially useful to us. Oh, dear. Well, we've got something. Man, I need to stretch my back. Okay. So maybe his upper arm might be casting a bit of a shadow on his lower arm, on his forearm. So I might draw that. I don't know if it would be that exact shape, but I'll pop in a little bit of shadow just so we got some kind of forms happening there. Let's switch pencils. I'm gonna start getting into the nitty-gritty now. That was a 6B pencil if you wanted to know what that was. I like to draw with blunt pencils, like sketch initially with blunt pencils, and then sort of go in with sharper pencils just to kind of sharpen up the details as I need. But let's get the eraser in there as well. Let's start sculpting with that. The eraser is a tool that is going to be most useful to you. So when I'm drawing the planes of the face here, I'm not really, well, I'm thinking about the planes, but I'm not explicitly drawing them. I'm just kind of using shadow to give me an image. And I'm kind of working with the marks that are already on the page. But yeah, even though I'm not drawing the planes of the face, I'm definitely thinking about them. And I don't know how many of you watching this have checked out my classical portrait course on Gumroad, but it was a very intense way of learning the planes of the figure, where we were drawing more constructively and we were drawing with geometry. It was like constructive drawing with the anatomy. So it was a very tricky course. I've got that one available on Gumroad, classical portrait course, if you want to check that out. But it was like a really in-depth sort of tutorial on the different features of the face. And yeah, we were drawing very constructively. Everything had a plane, everything had line work, and I was just kind of teaching people like how perspective and anatomy kind of go hand in hand. But when I'm working on these character designs, I'm not drawing like that. Like those lessons in Gumroad, they were more demonstration. I don't literally draw like that when I'm drawing these. They're just more demonstration for just knowing the 3D planes of the face. But when you're doing these character designs, you really got to simplify. So you got to communicate these 3D forms without really drawing them, which is hard. That's what simplification is all about. But it's hard to simplify. It's really hard to simplify. And I might just change that shape. I don't like that. That's too wide. And I struggle teaching students how to simplify. Like, I think using light and shadow, like what I'm doing, is a great way to simplify an image. But the truth is that artists see different things in a subject. Artists paint in different styles, and they simplify things in different ways. So I simplify using light and shadow because I feel like that's a very effective thing to do. But some artists will use, if you think about Zorn, for example, he used a simplified color palette. So he simplified his colors, right? Some people will simplify shape. And they will use very straight lines instead of very, convoluted organic forms. They'll just simplify the shapes of an artwork and do that. So artists simplify different things. And I think that's why, if you want to learn to simplify something, you really got to learn to just sketch quickly, as quick as you can, and just do it that way. Oh man, it is hot. It's like middle of winter, or sort of coming to the end of winter in Australia, and it does not feel like winter. I'm actually sweating in this studio. Okay, so the bicep kind of tucks into the forearm, something like that. I remember that part. Just need to, I don't know. Just need to make that look a little more natural. I don't know. I'm gonna get some texture of like the chainmail, which I'm literally just using hatching strokes for this. So I'm not even drawing each individual chain. I'm just kind of sort of thinking about the light source a little bit. Seeing where all the potential folds are. And then they just kind of get more and more invisible towards the top. So yeah, you can communicate a lot of information with hatching strokes. It's pretty amazing. Brain kind of completes the image for you in a sense. I've also just got this sudden urge to just play Rome Total War now. Normally I would be listening to the Rome Total War soundtrack while I'm drawing, but YouTube obviously has a problem with copyright and all of that, so can't be doing that. But man, that would be really good right now. Just want to go into that meditative state and just listen to music while I draw. I feel like I draw better that way. I don't know how that works, but okay. Well, we've got something. Just going to scribble in a little bit of this detail here on his shield. It's not bad. I don't really know how far I want to keep pushing this, to be honest. I feel like this sketch is pretty much finished. It took me way longer than I thought. What time is it? Okay, it's been 1 hour 25. I guess that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, I had a lot of fun anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I'll try and refine it in my own time, but that's a good impression of a sort of character there. Let me have a look at them on the screen here so I can see them. Okay. Yeah, he still looks cool. I don't know. But I do like all this detail on this guy's torso, so maybe I'll have to, I don't know. I might just have to like really refine this guy in my own time, if I can. But that would take a long time. So like what I usually like to do, like once I've got this impression, I would just come in here with like a really fine pencil and just really go along the edges, just sharpening things up. Not really disrupting the textures of the sketch because I do like them. But I would just kind of deepen some of the shadows, and I would refine some of the shadows in areas where I couldn't before. Maybe change the shape slightly if I think it's going to get me a better effect. But yeah, that's kind of stuff I have to do in my own time, I guess. I do want to actually just shade in the local values of this cape, which I should actually do with this pencil. It's just quicker. But yeah, I really like sketching like this. It's a lot of fun, very creative, and you get some pretty strong results, I think. Because that's kind of what makes an image. It's the light and shades of an image. Just going to kind of go into this chainmail texture a little bit, see if I can maybe push it a bit more. Should actually, so these sort of things on his chest, they have very reflective surfaces. So to draw that simply, I'm just gonna put like a core shadow along this edge here, and then just kind of let it fade out. And then that just gives it this impression of being a super reflective quality. It's a very cheap trick for drawing reflective surfaces. But reflections are very difficult. And you kind of got to look for easier ways of drawing these things if you can. Yeah, and his helmet here, like, there would be some reflective qualities in there. I'm just going to lose all of that detail there. I don't want it. I think that'll do. I think my brain has had enough. That's a fairly strong impression though. I can definitely work with that. But yeah, you can see how light and shadow is really all you need. You just need a strong sense of that. And I'm not calculating those shadows at all. It's not really what I'm doing. I'm just simply using the basics of what I know about light and shade and just going from there. And I'm just making, you know, like when I'm casting shadows on figures, I'm not really calculating where they're falling, obviously. You can do that with architecture. But you can't really do it with figures. Figures are just too complicated. So when I'm casting shadows, I'm just kind of just thinking what looks good, you know? I pick a light source, I map some very basic shadow shapes in, and then I just chip away at them and I sculpt them until I get something that I think looks good. And that's how I treat them. So, you know, what I could do down here, for example, like there's the chainmail here, which is casting a shadow on these leather straps. And if I just kind of push this one down and maybe change the angle a little more, that just makes these two, it looks like a three-dimensional form now. Do you see what I mean? So I'm not calculating shadows, I'm just pushing them around, moving them around, seeing what works, what looks good. Maybe I'll carry on with this figure, but I'm going to take a break from him. It's break time. Make sure you take plenty of breaks when you're drawing, guys. Very good idea to do so. You know, if you've been drawing for an hour and a half like I have, time to walk away, get yourself a coffee or make some lunch. Because, you know, when you come back to the drawing, you start seeing things a bit differently. You have to give your eyes a bit of a break from it. But I think that's it for this sketch, to be honest. I think this is good. I think this is kind of, it ain't really getting any better at this point. I could just keep, you can see me right now, I just can't help myself. I'm just going back into it. I could keep going back into it, but I think, I mean, this is how I think of sketching. Is the idea being communicated? Can we see what it is? And if the answer is yes, then that's good. It's a successful sketch. And I think we can see that I've got this Roman soldier, or an impression of him. So I think this is a very successful sketch. I would probably need to come back up to the head area and, you know, refine the reflections on that a bit more. Really pay a bit more attention to his face. I definitely need to do something with his arms. I'm just trying to think of the planes of his arms here. I'm just thinking, you know, like that's a muscle there. So maybe there's like a half tone in there somewhere. I'm going to look at Godfrey Bames for that one. See if you can help me out there. But yeah, I think we've got an impression of what we want. So that's a successful sketch. And if the sketch is successful, then there's no need to push it any further. But, you know, you're more than welcome to, obviously.